In 1914, America promised neutrality. 3 years later, that promise was broken. So what changed? To understand why America entered the war, we need to go back to the beginning.
Asterisk in 1914, the world was on fire, but America wasn't. While Europe tore itself apart, the United States watched from across the Atlantic, calm, neutral, and determined to stay out. President Woodrow Wilson declared, "The United States must remain impartial in thought as well as in action."
We stand for the maintenance of the highest ideals of liberty and the preservation of our democratic institutions.
For many Americans, the war seemed distant, almost unreal, a European problem, not theirs. Factories hummed, farmers harvested, families went about their daily lives, trade thrived, money flowed. Life continued as if the war was someone else's nightmare. Yet beneath this calm, tension was quietly brewing. Would neutrality last? Or was America on the edge of a decision that could change everything? Across the Atlantic, Europe was collapsing into chaos. Asterisk on June 28, 1914, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo set the world on fire. Within weeks, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Germany, Russia, France, and Britain were pulled in, and Europe plunged into total war. By August 1914, millions of soldiers were mobilized. Trenches carved across Belgium and northern France became home to countless armies. Cities were bombed. Civilians fled. Entire regions were destroyed. Every day, American newspapers reported these horrors. The U.S. public watched in shock and fascination, so far away, yet impossible to ignore. Trade routes were disrupted, ships were sunk. Economic tremors reached the Atlantic coast. America was safe, for now, but the war was beginning to touch American life in ways few realized. What began as a European conflict was becoming a global crisis. And the longer the war lasted, the harder it became for America to stay untouched. Asterisk, while Europe burned, America wasn't just watching, it was trading. By 1914, US banks had lent billions to Britain and France. Factories produced weapons, steel, and supplies for the Allies. Ships loaded with goods crossed the Atlantic daily. American businesses saw enormous profits, but this trade created a dangerous link. Neutrality was no longer simple. The US economy was tied to the fate of the Allies. By 1915, tensions grew. Germany had warned that ships carrying goods to the Allies could be targeted.
Ensure this warning is clear on all manifests.
The risks for neutral shipping are mounting, Herr Director.
Yet American merchants continued their trade, unaware that each shipment carried the risk of catastrophe. Neutrality was safe in theory, but the seeds of conflict were already planted. Every shipment tied America closer to the Allies. Neutral on paper, but economically invested in the outcome of the war?
Asterisk, by early 1915, Germany had escalated its naval strategy. On February 4, 1915, Germany declared the waters around the British Isles a war zone. Any ship, including neutral vessels, could be attacked by submarines without warning. This move shocked the world. American ships and citizens traveling across the Atlantic were now at risk. Trade routes grew dangerous overnight. President Wilson protested diplomatically, insisting that the U.S. had the right to freedom of the sea.
The United States must solemnly protest these actions and insists upon the unequivocal right to the freedom of the seas.
But Germany continued, believing that sinking enemy and neutral ships would starve Britain into submission. Not for the first time, neutrality faced a direct, deadly threat. America could no longer ignore the war happening across the ocean. Asterisk.
The ocean no longer felt like a shield. For the first time, Americans understood that neutrality could be attacked. Asterisk on May 7, 1915, the unthinkable happened.
Terrible, all those men lost at sea.
The RMS Lusitania, a British passenger liner carrying civilians, including 128 Americans, was torpedoed by a German U-boat off the coast of Ireland.
We're hit! Get clear!
To the boats, quickly!
Help us! The deck is...
The ship sank in just 18 minutes. Families were thrown into the cold Atlantic, and panic spread across the world. Newspapers in the United States ran horrific headlines. Americans killed at sea. President Wilson condemned the attack, but still hesitated to declare war. For the American public, the event was shocking. How could Germany attack a passenger ship and kill innocent civilians, including their own citizens? Yet, despite outrage, America remained officially neutral. The Lusitania had planted a seed of anger and suspicion, but the country was not yet ready to fight. Still, every American now understood the war in Europe was no longer someone else's problem. The Lusitania didn't bring America into the war, but it changed how Americans felt. Neutrality was no longer comfortable, it was uneasy.
This means war, I tell you. There's no turning back now.
Asterisks after the Lusitania tragedy in May 1915, America's anger simmered. President Wilson demanded that Germany stop unrestricted submarine attacks, warning that harming U.S. citizens would have consequences.
The world must be made safe for democracy. Its peace must be planted upon the tested foundations of political
Germany
liberty.
temporarily eased attacks in mid-19th, and Wilson accepted these promises, hoping peace could hold. Throughout 1915 and 1916, the U.S. tried to navigate a delicate path, staying neutral while protecting its citizens and trade. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the war raged on. Millions of soldiers remained trapped in endless trenches, civilians suffered. Every day brought new headlines that reminded Americans how close the conflict really was. By early 1916, Germany resumed unrestricted submarine warfare. Ships were sunk without warning, and American lives continued to be at risk. The tension had never been higher, yet Wilson still hesitated. America was angry, aware, and on edge. But not yet at war. Asterisk, January 16, 1917, a secret message changed everything. Germany sent the Zimmermann telegram to Mexico, promising that if Mexico joined the war against the United States, it would regain lost territories in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. British intelligence intercepted the message and quickly passed it to Washington. When the telegram was made public in March 1917, the American public was shocked. The threat was no longer abstract, it was personal. Suddenly, the war across the Atlantic was no longer Europe's problem. Germany had openly plotted against the United States. Neutrality was no longer safe. Public opinion shifted almost overnight. Americans began to demand action. For President Wilson, the choice became clear. The country could no longer remain on the sidelines. America was on the verge of a historic decision, one that would change the course of the war and the world. On April 2, 1917, he stood before Congress and delivered a historic speech, declaring that the world must be made safe for democracy.
It is a fearful thing to lead this great peaceful people into war. The world must be made safe for democracy.
4 days later, on April 6, 1917, the United States officially declared war on Germany. After nearly 3 years of neutrality, America had entered World War I.
America entered World War I in April 1917. The balance of power shifted overnight. The United States didn't just bring soldiers, it brought fresh energy, industry, and resources to a war Europe was exhausted from fighting. By 1918, more than 2 million American troops had arrived in Europe. Their presence boosted Allied morale and pressured Germany on multiple fronts. America's factories supplied weapons, food, and equipment at a scale no European nation could match.
Dropping bombs! Get cover! Move up! Keep moving! Watch the wire! Push forward! Let's go!
On November 11, 1918, the war finally ended. Germany signed the armistice, bringing 4 years of devastation to a close, but America's involvement left a permanent mark. The United States emerged as a global power, no longer isolated from world affairs. The decision made in 1917 reshaped international politics and defined America's role on the world stage for the rest of the
We must
century
proceed with
asterisk.
caution. The stability of the coming century depends entirely on the agreements we forge here today.
America didn't enter World War I because of one event. It entered because neutrality slowly became impossible. By 1917, the choice was no longer between war and peace, but between action and vulnerability. What do you think America should have stayed neutral, or was entering the war unavoidable? Share your perspective in the comments.